Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and it is official. The Washington Commanders have officially decided to franchise tag Daron Payne. Of course, weeks ago, we already knew that was more than likely going to happen. And then literally just a few days ago, it was reported that we should expect it to happen. And it was pretty much only a matter of time type of thing. And then now this morning, as of 3-something in the morning, Daron Payne has officially been tagged. He will take up $18.9 million against the Washington Commanders cap space. Of course, yesterday after releasing Bobby McCain and Carson Wentz, we moved up into top 5 cap space in the NFL territory, which means that we can afford to do this and we can afford to pay him long term if we still want to. Either way, we have the money. Speaking of long term, I want to break down why a long term deal is still very possible and why this franchise tag was pretty much inevitable even if we do end up paying him long term. And then also, is there a certain timing to this? First of all, Daron Payne is the first player out of the entire NFL to be tagged this offseason. But also, is there a reason they went ahead and rushed to do this before the combine? But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. Make sure you check all of the previous content I came out with. Definitely don't miss out on that Eric Bieniemy dream mock draft that I came out with a couple of days ago, where I get him his next Travis Kelce and his next great O-line to be able to redo what he just did for the Chiefs, going all the way to the Super Bowl, and all of that, having one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL. Also, stay tuned for the film sessions that I'm working on for this upcoming draft class, free agency draft, all of that type of stuff. Stay tuned for more mock drafts, everything. And without further ado, let's get it. Alright, so internet, even though most people are asleep right now, the internet kind of spiraled out of control when Adam Schefter tweeted, Washington defensive tackle Daron Payne became the first player this offseason to receive the franchise tag per sources. The franchise tag for Payne is projected to be $18.937 million. Again, if you've been watching my videos, you already knew how much this would go for, because I've already updated y'all on that several times, explaining what every position group's money would be if we had to franchise tag a player in either of those position groups. And then I already broke down the different types of tags, the non-exclusive, the exclusive, and then the transition tag. So if you want a deep explanation into all of that, I talked about that in my previous video about Daron Payne when I talked about the report about him expecting to be tagged. And then today again, we're discussing him officially being tagged, so we're going to move on from that. But I did want to briefly mention that for those of y'all who may have missed that. Washington placed the tag on Payne early this morning, continuing from the Adam Schefter tweet. Also, shouts out to Nikki Javala for bringing up good points as well. First of all, once Daron Payne signs this deal, if he does, which I'm pretty sure he would end up signing, it officially becomes fully guaranteed at that point. Also, Washington has until July 15th to try to reach a long-term deal with Daron Payne before we have to wait until the end of the season, I believe. So these are some interesting deadlines. Again, just to update y'all on the deadlines, man. February 21st was the first day to use franchise tags, and nobody got franchise tagged. Again, Daron Payne is the first one. He got tagged on the 28th. Also, the NFL Combine technically starts today on the 28th. And the timing, again, is really interesting that they went ahead and got this franchise tag out the way before the Combine started, the day that the Combine starts. Feel like it was a little rushed, and I want to know why. Also, March 7th, the deadline for the franchise tag. We don't have to worry about that anymore as far as Commanders fans go, because Daron Payne has already been franchise tagged. That doesn't even matter. But then March 15th, the new league year begins, so that's when free agency and all of that starts. Hopefully we have a new owner by then, but I wouldn't bank on it. I would not bet on it at all. And then you have March 26th, the NFL meetings. Will this probably be when Snyder is forced to sell? Maybe the owners vote him out and force him to sell, all of that type of stuff. So that could be really interesting. And then, of course, the draft is April 27th. That's the first day of the draft. And then May 1st is the deadline to pick up Chase Young's option. So those are just some interesting dates out there. But again, franchise tag wise, really the only thing we have to worry about is July 15th as far as signing Daron Payne to a long-term deal. And I'm assuming by then new ownership will be in place, and maybe they will go ahead and reach a long-term deal with him. And it's really funny too, because Daron Payne basically just got franchise tagged in his sleep. So like a lot of y'all are just waking up to the news. Daron Payne is just waking up to the news as well. It's probably a lot of y'all watching this video who may have heard before Daron Payne even heard. Again, you don't have to sign the tag to get franchise tagged technically. So again, he more than likely doesn't know by now, or by the time you're even watching this video as a viewer. But speaking of him signing anything, will he finally break the streak for us franchise tagging guys and them not signing long-term deals at some point later on down the line? Kirk Cousins, Brandon Sheriff, just to name a few. Is it possible that the Washington Redskins football team or Commanders can franchise tag somebody and then end up actually signing them to long-term deals? It's going to be really interesting to watch. Now going to Daron Payne and why he deserves a long-term deal still. In 2022, Daron Payne recorded a career high across the board with 11.5 sacks, 18 tackles for loss, 20 QB hits, and 5 passes defended. His best season of his career by far. He was on the last year of his deal, and the Commanders basically challenged him. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option, basically like they're looking like they may do with Chase Young, not pick up his 5th-year option to motivate him to go out there and ball out to earn his next contract. They challenged Daron Payne to do that, and he stepped up big time. Pro Bowler, even received a couple of All-Pro votes, and again with 11.5 sacks as an interior defensive lineman, I mean, that's already amazing in itself. But then when you notice the fact that he was 3rd out of all interior defensive linemen in the NFL in sacks in the 2022 season, that's crazy. And then out of everybody in the NFL, including edge rushers, outside linebackers, everybody, he was tied for 12th in sacks with that 11.5. That's very impressive. And then again, most importantly, as far as interior defensive lineman goes, he was 3rd only behind Quinnen Williams by half a sack and Chris Jones by 4 of them. And to be mentioned in the same range as Quinnen Williams and Chris Jones in any way possible is huge. I mean, he had more sacks than Javon Hargrave, Cameron Hayward, Jonathan Allen, Jeffrey Simons, Dexter Lawrence, Fletcher Cox, all of these guys. And that's just defensive tackle wise. He had more sacks than Danielle Hunter, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Justin Houston, Zadarius Smith, Yannick Ngakoue, Aiden Hutchinson, my boy Leonard Floyd, Preston Smith, Von Miller, Khalil Mack, DeForest Buckner, Bradley Chubb, our guy Montez Sweat. Literally tied for 12th out of the entire NFL in sacks regardless of position. But again, I want to point out the Chris Jones and Quinnen Williams things, because with him being 3rd out of all interior defensive linemen only behind those 2 guys, the thing that's really interesting is that Daron Payne, between those 3 guys, is the only 2023 unrestricted free agent. Quinnen Williams and Chris Jones both have another year in their contracts. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs or the New York Jets could choose to pay one of those guys long term and go ahead and extend them this offseason to get it out the way so they won't be in the same situation that we're currently in with Daron Payne. But as of right now, out of the top 3 sack leaders out of interior defensive linemen, Daron Payne is the only one who's an unrestricted free agent in 2023. The other 2 ahead of him are 2024 free agents. So this gets really interesting. I'm glad we were the first to tag, but most importantly, we need to be the first to pay them long term before these other guys get their deals and things can get really ugly. Because again, with Daron Payne, it's a good thing that he's 3rd in sacks out of interior defensive linemen. But then if another interior defensive lineman that had less sacks than him in the 2022 season gets paid long-term before him, his asking price is automatically going to be higher than that, even if it's higher than it should be. If one of those defensive tackles below Daron Payne ends up getting, for some reason, $20 million per year this offseason, Daron Payne's asking price is at the very least going to be $21 million per year just because that other guy got paid 20, just for example. So we need to jump out in front of this and pay him as soon as possible. Do not wait for other guys to get signed, because the asking price is only going to go up and up and up, and he has the stats to show it. His agent, and all he's going to do is pull up these all-pro votes, him making the Pro Bowl, him being 3rd out of interior defensive linemen in sacks, him having career highs in all of those different stats, QB hits, tackles for losses, passes defense, and sacks, of course, as well. It could get really ugly. We better jump ahead of this immediately. And it's no secret too, Daron Payne clearly wants to get paid. In his exit interview, I believe he was wearing like some bright green. The little locker room exit interviews at the end when everybody's clearing out their lockers, the last day that they'll be in the locker room until the next season, he was even talking about that he wants to be paid what he's owed and what he deserves. And then he also put on his Instagram story, quote, "In that mode, I need every penny," unquote, like last week sometime. Then he was wearing all them chains at the Pro Bowl and things like that. It could get ugly. And Corey Joel on John Com's latest podcast basically said that Daron Payne's next contract will be well north of Jonathan Allen's $18 million per year, and is likely to be somewhere between $22.5 and $24 million per year based on cap inflation and comparable players. So things could get really ugly. Spot Track, they have his market value at $19.4 million per year, and if he's willing to take that, please do it, because that's only $0.5 million more than what he's making on his franchise tag. So I'm pretty sure that's a complete lie. But hey man, Spot Track usually knows things, and so I'm just really hoping that they're right, but I just highly doubt it. He's definitely asking for a minimum of $21 million per year minimum. And like I said, Corey Joel on John Com's podcast said it could be somewhere between $22.5 to $24 million per year. And then again, it can only get worse and worse and worse and higher if we keep playing around and letting these other teams sign their defensive tackles long term before we sign Daron Payne. If you actually want to keep him long term, you better get ahead of it as soon as possible. Now, interestingly enough, luckily we have a quarterback with a lot of talent that's on his rookie deal. That's when your Super Bowl window is the widest open. Just look at the Eagles. They were able to trade for all of those guys, pay all of those veterans because Jalen Hurts was on a rookie deal. Now they're going to have to pay him big time money. The Giants are struggling to find a way to pay Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley big time money. They're not going to be able to afford to build these great teams around the quarterback. And look at the Cowboys. Put all that money into Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott, and they can't win more than one playoff game, any playoff series, no matter how talented they look on paper going into that season. Rookie quarterbacks are the wave, man. Unless you're just Pat Mahomes, the good to great quarterback on a rookie deal is the way to go. And that's the Commanders' window right now. I mean, granted, this is technically Sam Howell's rookie season coming up, his red shirt season, but contract-wise, this will be his second year. So we have 3 more years, including this upcoming 2023 season, of a Super Bowl window with Sam Howell if he's good enough to deserve it. If he goes out there and balls out and he's going crazy on his rookie deal, we will have the money to pay guys like Daron Payne, Cameron Curl long-term, Cole Holcomb long-term, Curtis Samuel long-term when that contract comes up the same time around Cameron Curl. But it looks like they're trying to get Cameron Curl done this offseason, hopefully along with Daron Payne. And we'll still have money left over to go and sign outside free agents from other teams if we want to as well. Again, like the Eagles did to get themselves to the Super Bowl last year. Again, good to great quarterback on a rookie deal, Super Bowl window wide open. This is our chance. Eric Bieniemy, the genius as offensive coordinator and sole owner and decision maker for everything offense. I'm excited. But to break down why I feel like this franchise tag was inevitable and why I feel like we still have a really good chance of signing them long term is because this had to happen. With old ownership potentially transferring everything to new ownership, franchise tagging them was the only thing that made sense. Again, the deadline to franchise tag a player was March 7th. We're not selling the team by then. So I'm pretty sure Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew were like, man, we got to go ahead and franchise tag Daron Payne now because we don't want to lose him to another team by the time the new owner gets here. So franchise tag him here, keep him safe until the new owner gets here, and then that new owner has until July 15th to sign Daron Payne to a long-term deal then. So franchise tag him. Don't allow other teams to pry into them and try to take them away from us. And then new ownership, whenever they end up becoming the new owners for the Commanders, have until July 15th to get a long-term deal done, which I think is quite possible. But again, my main point is that a franchise tag was inevitable whether we want to pay them long-term or not. It just makes the most sense. I mean, even if you want to tag and trade them, you had to tag them at first to do that. So it was obvious we were going to franchise tag them. This is not breaking news. The only really interesting thing about this is when we franchise tag them again, with him being the first player franchise tag, and we're doing it the morning of the combine. It's a little interesting. I don't exactly know what's going on right now. I don't exactly know how to dive into the timing of that, but it's really interesting. Maybe they wanted to go ahead and get the tag out the way. They wanted to get ahead and get Bobby McCain and Carson Wentz off the books as soon as possible, get Daron Payne's franchise tag done, and then maybe they can talk to Cameron Curl's agent and stuff like that and go ahead and get him signed long term at the combine. Because you know, at the combine, all of the players, all of the agents, coaches, everybody's there. I mean, Derek Carr is probably about to have, like, I heard, like 6 to 8 meetings with different teams at the combine. This is where everybody meets and mingles. So you go ahead and get all of that stuff out the way. Again, cutting the 2 players we cut, franchise tagging Daron Payne, and then now you're able to go into the combine and talk money to everybody you want to talk money to. I mean, you're technically not allowed to tamper and talk to outside free agents, but maybe you do. while you're there. And you're going into the combine knowing pretty much exactly, at least around how much cap space you have going into free agency. To again spend on players that we currently have that we want to retain long term, like Cameron Curl, who's not a free agent until 2024, but then you have Cole Holcomb, who's an unrestricted free agent right now and currently not on roster once the new league year starts in mid-March. And then there's also outside free agents. We may want to address tight end, offensive line. We can start talking to those agents and start talking deals and money, things like that, getting a range of what a player may want once free agency starts at the combine. And then also, what does this mean for Montez Sweat and Chase Young? Shouts out to Ben Standig of The Athletic. He said Washington hopes to keep Payne even if paying 2 defensive tackles hefty extensions is not ideal for roster building. Again, the only way you can even possibly get away with it is if you have a good to great quarterback on a rookie deal, and we potentially have that. I'm not saying Sam Howell is that yet because we still got to see him go out there and do it, but if you could pay 2 interior defensive linemen big money, it's only when you have a quarterback that's good to great on a rookie deal, plain and simple. The conundrum is the Commanders, having already paid Allen, also have defensive ends Sweat and Young poised for extensions over the next 2 off seasons. Sweat enters the 5th and final year of his rookie contract this season. Young missed 22 games following a significant 2021 knee injury, but offers high-end potential. Washington needs to pick up the 2020 Defensive Rookie of the Year's 5th-year option. From an asset allocation perspective, it's unrealistic to extend all 4, putting Payne's extension hopes at figures he desires in doubt. Good points. And again, I just feel like they're going to probably do the same thing with Chase Young that they did with Daron Payne. Not pick up the 5th-year option to motivate him. Let him go out there and have the best season of his career and earn that big-time long-term money. Now with Daron Payne, since they did that, they called him out, challenged him. He stepped up to the plate and even exceeded expectations. Now you got to pay him. Because what message does that send to the rest of the team that you do that to somebody and they do everything you ask them to do and more, and then you don't pay them long term like you promised them? Basically, that's going to send a terrible message to the rest of the team. Not just Daron Payne, but players already on the team and even outside free agents looking to potentially come to the Commanders. They're going to be like, well, Daron Payne did everything they asked him to do and he still didn't get his money, so why would I? So even if it's not because you think Daron Payne is a great enough player that deserves that type of money on a long-term extension, you also need to think of the repercussions for if you don't sign Daron Payne long term and how that looks to other players around the NFL. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. Do you feel like franchise tagging Daron Payne was the right move? Do you also agree that it was inevitable no matter what, whether we wanted to sign him long term or not? And also, what type of money would you be willing to give Daron Payne long term? Would you prefer to pay Daron Payne long term or Montez Sweat or Chase Young long term? Between the 3, who would you be willing to let go the most? I feel like the most votes are going to probably go to Chase Young, but we may be surprised. But either way, I appreciate all of the support, man. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. Shouts out to all my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors. Name you see scrolling on the screen right now. I'm going to catch y'all later. I'm out.